have with me today someone who is not only an innovator, but someone that is important to the local economy within the Northeast Ohio area, but someone that has a lot of experience when it comes to the way he looks at his organizations, his businesses that he runs, and is part of a lot of different organizations as well. So I want to welcome Ren Camacho to the show. Welcome, Ren.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Three for Three. I'm your host, Kurt Glyden, and we are getting the year started here. We're really looking forward to new ideas. We're recording this here in January of 2025, right when the Consumer Electronics Show is happening, and there's a lot of ideas buzzing. I think as everyone gets started for the new year, there's just a lot of potential that we see, a lot of ways that we are thinking about the world differently and how we operate differently. And I think that just it comes with a lot of potential, just a lot of excitement for what happens in the new year. And that's a topic that we're going to cover today on today's show. So let me give a little introduction to who Ren is, and then we're going to dive into the topic. So Ren Camacho is the president and CEO of the Akron-Canton Airport. Since 2018, Ren has been at the helm of Northeast Ohio's vital economic engines, leading a team of over 60 employees, spearheading strategic planning initiatives, and overseeing transformative capital improvement programs. With over 30 years of experience in aviation and transportation engineering, Ren has managed more than 400 million infrastructure projects, ranging from runway safety enhancements to master planning and airline negotiations. Before joining Akron-Canton, Ren held pivotal roles at the City of Cleveland's Department of Port Control and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, where he contributed to major projects like the World Trade Center site and New York Metro airports. Ren's experience spans FAA regulations, airport operations, and economic development, but his impact doesn't stop there. He's deeply committed to his community, serving on numerous boards and mentoring future leaders within the Akron-Canton region. Ren holds degrees in transportation planning and civil engineering, and is a licensed professional engineer. And he's recognized as one of Crain's Cleveland's Business Power 150, Ohio 500, and notable Latino leaders. Join us as we dive into Ren's remarkable journey, his vision for the future of aviation, and his dedication to driving economic growth and opportunity in Northeast Ohio. And Ren, I want to start by just asking, with your background, was the airline industry and aviation something that you grew up wanting to do?
And again, thanks, Kurt, for the opportunity to be on your podcast. The quick answer is no. I started my career as a civil engineer through some of the accolades that you alluded to there as far as education. So thank you for that. So yeah, I came out of graduate school, and right away I landed that job with the New York Port Authority back in the early 90s. And I know I'm dating myself and a little more gray hair these days. But that career really was more of a civil traffic engineer. So I was dealing more with roadways, public roadways, the signage that you see out on the highways, and alignments and designs of those pieces of infrastructure, and really didn't have aviation in mind. However, with the Port Authority, they not only own the World Trade Center site that you alluded to, but the bridges and tunnels like the George Washington Bridge, the Holland and Lincoln tunnels, the three major airports, JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark, for example, port facilities. And out of the 14 years I had a chance to work with them, I think I had the most, most energy and most interaction from a customer experience or guest experience standpoint working at the airports. So really seeing, kind of going behind the scenes with various projects that I had during the time there, out of all of those facilities that I worked at, including the World Trade Center site, pre and post 9/11, I think that the airports were really something that I had a passion for. So you think about 9/11, right? That incident, that tragic day, and just that really lit a fire within me. And just to take a step back, my dad was a blue collar New York City bus driver. So there's transportation, quote unquote, in my blood. So I kind of steered my career towards, civil and kind of more what we call landside traffic engineering or transportation engineering. And then slowly started to move toward aviation, especially after 9/11, given what happened that day, and really focusing on wanting to make aviation safer, right? So TSA comes along, there's all these rules now for coming into the airports, and I was still with the Port Authority at that time. So really seeing in that industry, i.e. aviation, really evolving itself and really wanted to play a part in making it safer was really what drove me to the position I am today. So that's kind of the long-winded answer to say, not initially, but eventually, due to certain circumstances like 9/11, I'm here sitting in front of you.
I think we all have paths that are sometimes laid out in front of us, and none of those are ever straight. They are always winding, and you have a lot of different stops along the way. And the key is just to make the most of it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mine's was a meandering one to your point. And if you fast forward to my time, you alluded to my time at Cleveland, the city of Cleveland, I worked there from 2007 to 2018. I really started to hone my aviation skills. My Port Authority career was more, again, on the land side, so dealing more with the public side of airports and other facilities, of course, but at airports, mostly on the frontage roadways, parking garages, up to the terminal front door, if you will. And it wasn't until my time in Cleveland where I really started to have a little more ownership, if you will, of the airfield environment, the runways, the taxiways, interactions with the FAA and all the highly regulated, things that we have to deal with here on the airport, not only on a daily basis, but on an annual basis. So it's one of those things as you hone your skills, you definitely have more of an appreciation for the industry, for the craft, if you will, and again, the interaction, whether it's the guests that come through the front door or your teammates, right, the folks that work with you. We think I think personally it's just one of the best industries. It's very dynamic. You never know what's coming each and every day. There's always something different. You have to pivot one way. There might be a personnel issue. There might be an issue with a piece of infrastructure or something along those lines. So that's what excites me to get up every morning.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you need to rely on those things because I can imagine that it can be a very stressful industry to work in at times. And as you mentioned, the interaction and the experience that your guests through the airport have is certainly an important part of it. And I think this is probably a good segue into our conversation for today. As you think about the airline industry, at its base, it's getting person from point A to point B. But there is a lot else around that, as you mentioned, like, just even from parking, even from getting inside the door, that's part of the experience right from the very top. And that's something that I know that you probably need to continue to think about and innovate and think about things in a little bit different ways. And that's as I talked about at the beginning of the show. I want to talk a little bit about how you and how the airport is looking at whether you consider marketing or communications or customer experience, thinking about things a little bit differently to just give a better and maybe a little different way of experiencing that point A to point B kind of interaction that you have with folks. So let's start by talking about how you're looking at that kind of a topic right now, and what are some of the initiatives coming up?
No, thanks for the question, Kurt. So I think it would make sense to take a step back, really to look at what our mission, our vision, and our values are. And all of those elements are really tied around the guest experience, right? The moment you leave your house to the moment you get to that gate to board the plane to get from point A to point B outside of the Akron-Canton region. We want to make sure that that experience is as seamless, as stress-free as we can possibly make it, right? You think about some of the larger airports, and I won't name those larger airports, but some of them can be quite stressful. You're walking longer to the gates, you're paying more for parking. That's just the quality of life goes down, right, at those airports. They're congested, and you just feel a sense of increased stress when you get there. Where do I go? Which gate? Which checkpoint or what have you? Whereas CAK, you leave your house, whether you're being dropped off or you're taking an Uber or you're parking the car in the lot, which helps us, of course, and helps the community because the revenue that's generated helps your airport. And I'll start off with that too. The taxpayers own the airport, right? The airport is considered a political subdivision of the state of Ohio. So technically, the taxpayers of the state own the airport. So when I'm out and about in the community talking about that guest experience, it's always about this is your airport, you community, whether it's a chamber, whether it's a Rotary Club, whether it's a podcast, right? It's always about the guest experience and first and foremost thinking about the folks coming through the front door. So that's really tied to our mission, vision, and values. Obviously, we have to, you mentioned earlier, we're an economic driver for the region, over $1 billion in local economic impact. Plenty of jobs, over 4,000 jobs that are created directly, indirectly, and induced here at the airport each and every day. We're self-sustaining, so the revenues that I alluded to that we do collect from parking, from someone who buys a cheeseburger at the concession stand, or someone who rents a car, we get a fee for that. All of those revenues that we collect go right back into the upkeep of the airport to pay our light bills and have the proper infrastructure and equipment and chemicals, if you will, to plow our runways to make them safe for your airport. So that's kind of the message and the theme, right? Being socially responsible as well, and we'll get into that, like some of the neat ideas that we're talking about from a socially sustainable standpoint, community engagement standpoint, that really makes a lot of sense. So those are kind of some of the main themes of our mission, vision, and values. Our values tie around, safety, accountability, and integrity, right? More for our employees, but what they emanate into the community is just as critical, right? When they're interacting with a tenant, with a guest that comes through the front door, or stakeholder that just might be interacting even offsite, off airport. So those are critical to us. And beyond the mission, vision, and values, we have what we call core areas or areas of focus. And those tie around the guest experience, which I spoke to in pretty much a decent amount of depth here. The notion of preserving our assets. And despite our runways and our taxiways being important assets, our most prized asset are our employees. So making sure that our employees are stocked, if you will, with the proper tools, the proper equipment, the resources to be able to do their jobs each and every day. We have a staff of about 60 employees now, and we have a great team. We think we have the best in the industry, no shame in saying that, and really wanted to make sure that, again, that they're equipped with the proper, again, resources to be successful beyond what they need for, again, enhancing the airport experience and being able to safely take a plane from point A to point B, starting and ending at CAK. Revenue generation I talked about, right? More specifically, non-aeronautical revenue. So the aeronautical revenue are the fees we collect from the airlines, right? They pay rent to occupy the gate spaces, the ticket counters. Every time they land an airplane is a fee. So those are aeronautical revenues. The non-aeronautical revenues are the parking fees, the concession fees that I talked about, the car rentals. So the more we can maximize of those non-aeronautical revenues, the lower we can keep the aeronautical revenues, i.e. keeping the costs down for the airlines, which makes it very attractive beyond the experience of coming through the front door that I talked about, to really want to stay here for the long haul. So we focus on revenue generation, more specifically, again, non-aeronautical revenue from that, just looking at it from that perspective. And then finally, the community engagement experience, which might be a segue to the next segment here, which is some of the neat things we're doing to really allow CAK to elevate its notoriety to the public, to those that are in and around the Akron-Canton region. And we are really working on some neat things. So I'll stop there and offer your feedback.
Well, as I think you were alluding to, I think that it is a great segue into what's next. As our listeners right now, we have a good mix of business owners and folks that are really trying to drive the way that they think about their business differently. And you're going to have some general consumers out there as well. But everyone's looking for a little bit of ideas of like what can be done differently. How can we think about things in a different way so that when they're trying to talk about their businesses or think about their lives differently, they can have a little bit of inspiration. So what either is Akron-Canton Airport doing to think outside of the box from the experience or marketing standpoint, or we could also touch on what's happening within the industry as well. There may be some larger trends, so Ren, where's a good place to start with that topic?
Yeah, sure. And we have several initiatives that we're working on that really bring the community into their airport, right? It's that stressing of, this is your airport. Our industry is a use it or lose it kind of proposition that we have, right? You either get on those planes and use them, or we will lose service to certain cities and destinations. So the community has hugely supported CAK over the last several years, coming out of the pandemic, of course, with primarily with Breeze Airways, who came to the airport through the pandemic toward the end, working with Jobs Ohio, the economic development arm of the state, to bring that airline here. And we were down to four nonstop destinations. Pre-COVID, we're up to 20 now. So we've increased our destinations fivefold. Now, granted, there's a lot of heavy emphasis on Florida. A lot of folks like to tend to
Mhm.
think of I'm sorry, as Florida as Southern Ohio, right? So they tend to look to travel to Florida, to those sunnier destinations, perhaps in Nashville or Vegas, which we also offer on Breeze, and these are all nonstop routes. Pre-pandemic, we had primarily business travelers coming through the airport. The split was probably 60-40 business to leisure. So these days, it's probably 80-20 the other way,
Wow.
leisure to business. So that's why there's a huge emphasis on the leisure traveler to Florida, to the Nashvilles. So it's getting out into the community, being on podcasts, of course, like this, to really get the message out that we really want that business community back, to CAK, to be able to reestablish locations like New York and Houston and that sort of thing, which
Mhm.
ties into some of the neat concepts that we're working on from the marketing perspective. And one of the plans that we have is to really showcase the airport behind security. One way we do that, is by being the only airport in the state of Ohio that allows non-ticketed passengers onto the other side of security, onto the secure side of the airport, I should say. So no longer do you need an actual ticket to board a plane to get onto the secure side of the airport. You provide 24 hours notice to our airport staff. Again, it's on our website, and we can definitely showcase that. If I could provide that to you at a later time, what the link is. But you provide your credentials. You go through the TSA checkpoint like everyone else, and you're able to enjoy some time at the new restaurant that we have on the other side of security. You can see someone off at the gate like you used to before 9/11, or receive someone at the gate back like those days. So it's one of those opportunities that we see is a welcome attraction, and it's starting to grow. We can establish up to 50 guests a week, and we're probably in the 10 to 15 right now because the word's just slowly getting out. But it really talks about the vision of our improved travel experience. So we see that as one marketing tool, if you will. The next opportunity that we have to, again, attract from a marketing perspective folks into CAK is we have a few efforts kind of outside the perimeter of the airport fencing. And one is we have beehives at the airport. We have established 4 beehive locations around the perimeter of the airport. About a year and a half ago, that was established through the assistance of a beekeeper in Hartville. And that beekeeper, along with some guidance from Pittsburgh's airport, which has already an established bee colony, to have bees established. Those bees have since produced honey, and we decided to bottle that honey and sell it at the airport. So it's a nice little sustainability story, ties into our, again, being environmentally and socially responsible from that side. Very similarly, we have farmers that come out from the area, and they will farm some of our properties outside the fence, and they'll bale that hay, and cows will eat that hay, and the Holsteins, and they'll produce milk and cheese. And in this case, the cheese is produced and brought back to the airport and sold as part of a grilled cheese sandwich that we have at our observation deck restaurant. So pretty neat sustainable stories, right? Thinking outside the box, getting that messaging out there, marketing the airport from that perspective, we think are pretty neat. And then the other two community related events I will add, Kurt, one is our 5K on the runway. It starts and ends at the Maps Air Museum. If your listeners haven't been to the Maps Air Museum, I highly recommend going there, especially the young ones. It's a really neat facility to to go through. And you got a lot of former military vets that really love to share their stories. They're all volunteers from the area. And that race goes, again, it's a 5K, so it goes on the actual runway of the airport. So we're able to promote the facility. The folks get a nice view of the airport, but also, of course, promoting one of our prized assets in the form of the Maps Air Museum. So that's a neat facility, a neat effort as well. And then the last effort that we undertake with the community that really draws them in, that highlights the airport and markets us in a very unique way, is we have a trick or treat event at the airport. So every October 31st or so, roughly around that date, we'll have folks coming in from all walks of life that, just to spend some quality time at the airport with parents. This past October, we had about 3,000 parents and their children come through the airport, obviously handing out candy, but also we have touch a truck opportunities out front with the various organizations, from the airport to the Summit County Sheriff's Office to Akron Children's Hospital to some of our tenants. And then we have a little arts and crafts section. The Akron Children's Museum comes out as well. So it's really a fun-filled event. It's a not so scary. So, if someone's trying to come in with a scary mask, we kind of stop them at the door. It's really meant to bring in folks and really showcase and highlight the airport. So we're passing out route maps. We're passing out information about the airport to the parents, of course, and the kids, kids that are curious about that. And those are some of the neat ways that we're looking to market the airport that really bring in the community again to their airport.
Wow, that's a lot of interesting things that are happening here, and it's all, it really, it strikes me as it's all very family friendly. The whole idea of beekeeping and that being a part of an airport initiative, I can imagine that it's getting a lot of families just engaged with that, and especially younger kids. And the idea of being able to go behind the gates to meet someone, that really opens the door to allow children that could be traveling on their own to do that in a probably a little bit more safe way and have a recognizable face there a lot sooner.
No, absolutely. If you're an unaccompanied minor that, a parent is looking to see off, now they can accompany them to the gate. You can do that through the airlines as well, but if you're kind of stressed and maybe forgotten, you can sign up and they'll get you through to be able to do that. So it's one of those unique opportunities. Again, we want to do as much as we can to create that invaluable guest experience through the airport. Again, whether you're actually getting on a plane or whether you're just seeing someone off behind the security
Yeah.
check.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the taking a idea and actually making it a reality. So Brendan, you mentioned a lot of different things that has been happening here at the airport, and just pointing at beekeeping for an example. Is this something that came to you as an idea, or is it something that you or a staff member said, hey, this is a great idea, let's see if there's someone that can facilitate that? Because it's probably not a natural thing for any kind of business to say, let's do this on the side. What's your approach when it comes to an idea to actually say, is this something that we can do, and then how do we do it?
No, sure. So for the beekeeping idea specifically, it was we were approached by our environmental team of two
Mhm.
to come out and look at a unique way. They had done some research. They researched the aviation industry for some unique ways to tackle environmental challenges, but more from a sustainability standpoint. And once they saw what Pittsburgh International was doing, their airport, as well as I think there's maybe 8 to 10 airports across the country that are doing similar things with beekeeping, that they made a call to that airport, and that Pittsburgh basically said, well, we worked with a local beekeeper in the Allegheny County area. We would recommend you do that. So that's what put us in touch with, just do just some phone calls and some outreach to the beekeeper in Hartville that I alluded to. And that set the stage for having him come out to secure the sites, what made a lot of sense as far as locations, and really taking the bull by the horns, if you will, to ensure that the effort went seamlessly. There was a very minor use agreement that we had to sign with that beekeeper to have so many units. And then after a certain amount of time, he kind of wipes his hands clean, and our environmental team kind of takes the reins from there. And that happened about, I would say, again, that year and a half ago. Once the beehives themselves were established, the beekeeper kind of walked away, and our team just, again, took the reins. And they've been successful ever since with producing the additional beehives, because we just started with one location. The environmental team actually located and situated the remaining 3 sites, as well as the production of the honey, the bottling of the honey. They coordinated with our marketing team on what this should look like. They came up with a catchy name, 1946 Honeybee Company, 1946 being the inception of the airport. So a lot of those things were put into place discussed and put into place over the last year or so, to really, again, set the stage to where we're at today, where we're actually selling the honey bottled and being sold behind security. So that's one draw, right? With the guest pass program, how you tie 2 marketing efforts together. You can use the guest pass program. The only location to get the honey is behind security. So that's sort of an incentive to be part of the program. Word of mouth gets out. The messaging there is to get more people behind security. Maybe they spend a little money, maybe they grab a bite to eat, and that helps our bottom line to, again, keep our runways and our equipment and all the things that allow us to be safe, right, and secure for your airport, that much more. So that's kind of some of the behind the scenes efforts going on. And I'll have ideas from time to time that I'll share with the environmental team. The bee hive, bee colony concept was not one of them. Mine's are more technical in nature, being I'll don my civil engineering cap on. If I have a certain idea, I'll try to persuade the team that this might make sense. Obviously, we look at dollars and cents and budgets and that sort of thing. But looking at trade organizations, looking at what the industry is doing is always something that myself and the team are always looking at to create ideas like a bee colony.
Yeah. Well, it's a unique story that's how that's come about, and I think it has a good tie-in with when you talk about identity. You're representing both the Akron-Canton Airport, and you're also representing for all the travelers that are coming into the airport with the experience they're getting and the identity of our region. And how do some of these initiatives help you establish the identity and the positioning of the airport for people that may not know Akron-Canton other than what they may have heard, from a friend or online?
Sure. No, it's all about the marketing, right? Getting the word out. We have a great social media campaign with a lot of these efforts that I talked about. So making sure the word gets out through, again, the Instagram and the LinkedIn's and Facebooks of the world, and then making sure, whether it's a chamber event that I am presenting, a podcast like today, just making sure that the word continues to get out, not just by the president and CEO, but also the vice presidents in the organization, kind of the boots on the ground folks that work for us as well, that they're invested. They know that there's this investment in their airport, and the place that they come to work each and every day really matters to them and their families. So making sure that these conversations are happening over the dinner table. And whenever I sit with an onboarded staff member, as an example, excuse me, I always have a SWOT discussion with them: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So it's like, tell me those things that are strengths and weaknesses of the airport that people are not talking about, right? We know we're quick, we're efficient. We know some of our weaknesses are getting more of those business-centric destinations, because the business community hasn't quite gotten back to flying in earnest yet, out of CAK specifically. And then those opportunities, those external opportunities and threats, right? We know certain establishments in and around the Akron-Canton Airport, our success is really driven by their success. So how do you think outside the box, meaning the employee, for things that we don't know about that could also be beyond those opportunities that we do know about, the ones that we don't? How do we, capture those? How do we share those to make sure that experience of the passenger, but also you as the most prized asset, like to make your jobs easier and better and more unique and inviting to not only those that are here, but those coming after us, in terms of employees, but also in terms of tenants, in terms of the guests that come through here? How do we maximize that potential And it's really getting that messaging out, whether it's, again, the social media component, but also word of mouth through our employee base, our stakeholders. You alluded to the chamber representations. I'm on multiple chambers and, Kent State Board of Trustees as well as an example. So making sure the word gets out about the, Akron-Canton Airport and, the fact that we have the lowest fares in the region and very affordable, and all of that really plays into marketing and really setting ourselves apart from maybe another airport in the region, or others that are competing for that customer, for that guest that's coming through the front door.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to shaking things up, and I think this is something that a lot of businesses struggle with. It's so easy to do your thing every day, whatever your job is, and whatever that requires. And I'm thinking about everyone's larger staffs at this point. You clock in, you do your thing, and you check out. What's your approach to your staff to say, okay, we need to think about this challenge differently? Do you have any kind of tips or tricks that have worked well for you to help your team sit down, forget about what may be their typical daily journey, and say, okay, we need to look at this and approach this in a different way so that everyone that you interact with has a better experience at the end of the day?
No. Thanks for the question. I would say what we've embarked on, and it'll be definitely part of this new strategic plan. We're embarking on a 3-year strategic plan, and part of that will include participation from the folks that are boots on the ground all the way to the vice presidents. So we want to make sure that everyone has a say with where the direction of the airport's going over the next 3 years. So whether they're focus groups, monthly meetings with the managers, we have biweekly meetings with our vice presidents. We want to make sure that there's transparency, that the communication, which is first and foremost in this organization, that it's open and the dialogue is two-way. If there is a challenge that's brought forward, let's say it's a rank and file, someone let's say in custodial has an issue, that they're making sure they're bringing that information to their manager, to the VP, and if it needs to be elevated to my office, then we're addressing that issue. The one thing I always tell our VPs to ensure that their managers are aware of is you can bring a problem to us, but make sure you have 1 or 2, maybe 3 solutions as well. Not just bring a problem and again walk away and hoping that the manager or the VP or even at times the CEO is the one to resolve this issue. And I think that mentality was something that was more prevalent 15, 20 years ago. And it's one of those things that as long as I'm CEO here, if you're coming to me with a problem or coming to a manager or VP with a problem, you need to have a couple of solutions. So it's that SWOT discussion that I talked about earlier. What are those opportunities, those strengths, those weaknesses and threats to the organization, and making sure that, if those are things that are challenges, right, to your day-to-day job, or something that a guest may have an issue with. It might be, someone lost a piece of luggage and all it takes is a phone call, or all it takes is, walking over to the ticket counter to say, hey, this individual needs a little help, right? Going that extra leg, just doing that little extra thing to separate us from other airports, which are larger, which might be busier, which may not have the time. We have to make the time if we're going to remain competitive as that regional airport here in Northeast Ohio.
I think that's a great tip, and for our listeners, it's an easy thing to implement. Of just coming to asking your team to say, problems will happen, but come with a couple solutions as well.
Sure.
Keeps people
And
thinking.
even, we keep our airport pretty clean. So you see something on the floor, just grab it. It doesn't cost you anything. Our custodial team is spread thin, and at times, especially during congested days of the week. And I'm always one picking up trash inside the terminal, outside on the frontage, and hopefully folks see that. And if the CEO is doing it, why can't I do it? As a manager, or again a rank and file, and that sort of thing. So, also I would add, Kurt, that meeting with our tenants is critical. We meet monthly with our tenants, so they have challenges, they have concerns as well. I report to a board of trustees. Sometimes they hear things and then it funnels down to me. So it's one of those things that could be a challenge in my position as well. And I have to, figure out a couple of solutions and have those, at the ready. But when it comes to the tenant and stakeholder issues, yeah, a lot of them are very unique. It could be something as simple as a parking spot that someone normally gets and now it's being taken by someone else. So it's really finding the right resources to resolve that issue. It could be a law enforcement issue.
Mm.
We're a city within a city. We really are. Anything you think a city or municipality goes through, we go through it. We have the roof leaks, we have, plumbing issues and heating and cooling issues, as well as, the day-to-day issues of, outdoor lighting or, parking and that sort of thing. So it's always something dynamic every day. And I think I mentioned this earlier that it's one of those things that I really love. And as long as those changes and the ability to address those are quick and can be done in a positive light, that I really enjoy coming to work every day.
No, that's fantastic. Well, Ren, I've got one more question for you, and that is future looking. As I led the show off, a lot of excitement around new technologies, and you hear a lot about that within the transportation industry. Certainly, driving transportation has been impacted by self-driving cars and AI and new technologies. What are you excited about, or what kind of initiatives are you looking at for the future for Akron-Canton Airport?
Yeah, no, thanks. A couple of initiatives that are going on. One is tied to AI. We're kind of slowly taking a look at AI and how it could benefit more, record keeping, HR, record keeping, and that sort of thing. Payroll, a little sensitivity with respect to payroll for obvious reasons, but just taking a closer look on how AI could assist the airport and offer some alternative solutions. And we talked a little bit earlier about, if there's a challenge, maybe AI can help us with suggestions on solving some of those challenges when it comes to day-to-day operations. So we're looking at AI as well into 2025. As part of that 3-year strategic plan that I alluded to, innovation, technology will be a part of that conversation. Beyond AI, we're looking at basically where the future of drones and flying electric aircraft. Those in your audience and yourself, of course, included in this, may recall the Jetsons and that cartoon with George Jetson flying in his electric aircraft with his family. That's a reality now, and those aircraft are being tested out there. We're one of 2 airports in the state of Ohio that actually has an electric charging station for aircraft. It's on the airfield, and we've actually had a few of these test aircraft come to CAK over the last 3 years. I think maybe 4 visits in the last 3 years. So it's been pretty neat to watch that airplane come in and recharge, and then up it goes. And it's being tested right now. There's obviously rules and regulations, and we think it'll likely start in the cargo arena. So you think about Amazon and dropping boxes with drones to someone's doorstep, or maybe prescription medication to someone who's elderly because they can't get to the local drugstore. So it might start there. And then if you think about whether it's drones or maybe some of these aircraft that can get out to an accident scene because an ambulance and a fire truck or helicopter are just stuck in traffic, or maybe it's too congested, maybe it's too steep a terrain, where a drone or one of these airplanes can go in and drop perhaps an AED machine or a defibrillator to save a life. So
Mhm.
they're thinking this technology will evolve in the medical arena and the cargo arena first, and then eventually you'll start seeing, like the Jetsons, the transport of people. In essence, the Uber of the skies. It'll likely be an air taxi from downtown Akron. Maybe you want to visit me at the airport instead of hopping in an Uber. And after all the testing is done to ensure that this technology is safe, of course, be able to hop on a helicopter. It's affordable, right? Because at first, with any new technology, it'll be pretty pricey. But once the costs come down after a few years, the thought is these will be flying around just as much as you see helicopters, and same corridors that they fly. One of the concerns that we have, of course, as an industry is, you see a lot of these new objects, if you will, in the air, and that creates visual pollution. Well, visual pollution translates to noise pollution, right? So we have to get the elected officials on board that this is a technology that's here and here to stay, and we want to be a part of that story here in Northeast Ohio when it comes to the airport. And then the last thing I would say beyond that technology is solar technology. So we are investing in some solar technology over at our car rental ready return area. We have a project that we're working on now with a third party through a power purchase agreement to install some solar panels over the car rentals. Those car rentals are going into the electric vehicle technology, automobile vehicle technology, electric technology. So we want to be prepared when they do that in earnest. So not only will that solar technology be able to recharge those vehicles that are parked underneath, because it'll be a canopy setup, but it also will provide energy back to the grid into the terminal environment to offer energy savings to us at the airport. So those are some of the neat things, like next 3 to 5 years as part of that strategic plan that we're looking at, how best to roll these out. Obviously budgets and, board approvals and all the things that really matter to the airport, and getting the word out, right? The messaging, just like with the unique concepts like the beehives, we have to make sure for the solars and the advanced air mobility, the drones, and all of that messaging gets out into the community. So there's that acceptance and that they know it's coming. So beyond the internal messaging, getting it out to the external stakeholders will be key.
That's all very exciting, and it's really good to know that an airport like this is stepping up in being a leader in some of these opportunities. I think it's always I know as a business owner myself, being small and nimble has a lot of advantages,
Oh, yeah.
and you can sometimes flex in different areas where the big large guys in the room can't always do that. So, but
Right.
that's great to
Right.
know.
Yeah, no, I'll just add too with the advanced air mobility, or the kind of the drones and these electric airplanes, we've already established kind of a task force with other organizations in Northeast Ohio, like Team Neo, like Kent State University, Baldwin Wallace College, Manufacturing Works, which is up here in Cleveland as well. We've basically formed a consortium, and we're actually going out to various chambers. We were actually down in Richland County before the end of the year presenting what advanced air mobility is, kind of a 101, and that, hey, this is coming. And everyone offered their unique perspective. Of course, I was on a panel as well that offered the airport perspective. Like, these things, as they come to evolve and become more prevalent in our area, these places need a place to park. They need a place to re-energize, right? So right now in our airport master plan, right, kind of the outlook for the next 15, 20 years, there is no, we call these things vertiports, like where they would park, like a parking lot for electric aircraft. We don't have that right now. So we have to figure out over the next 3 years with the strategic plan, if we were to go with a vertiport parking lot concept for electric aircraft, which takes about 1 to 3 acres of land, where would that be? Is it on the public side? So if someone's getting off one of these electric airplanes to then get on a conventional aircraft to go out to Vegas, is that where we should place it? Because right now all we have are empty parking lots. Do we kind of niche or carve out a section of one of the parking lots to do that? We have 80 acres of untapped land on the west side. Does it go over there because it's sort of pristine, but then the logistics of crossing 2 active commercial runways to get over to the terminal, to get on that plane, so there's a lot of logistical issues that we have to work out, but it's a nice challenge to have. Again, it makes my job exciting, and for what's coming in terms of innovation and technology.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Ren, pleasure to have you on the show today. For our listeners that want to learn a little bit more about you or about the airport, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. Our airport email is, my email, I should say, is rcamacho, RCAMACHO at Akron-Canton That's all together. Obviously, the airport website, the Akron-Canton folks can go to for more information about the guest pass program, about what we're doing with the beehives and some of these other initiatives. Yeah, those are, email me directly or airport website. Either way is a great way to get information about your hometown airport.
I'm looking forward to picking up some of that honey next time I come through the airport. So it sounds like a good deal.
Great.
Thanks again for being on the show today, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of 3 for 3. Hope you got a lot of good information from it this time, and look forward to listen to it next time. Take care.